I met a Gypsy.
Last bike to talk about for the 450s, the Honda. Dude, I want to like it, eh?
Yeah.
I really...
Hey, it's the bike that won all the races, so it should be the best.
Oh, apparently. Dude, that bike feels like it's so good.
Yeah.
And then it just turns under itself. And it's every turn. It feels like everywhere, at least for me. There was just not... I was basically, the more I rode it, the more I would just anticipate when it was going to have that real, like, oversteery moment.
Yeah.
And then, but I didn't even know how you'd fix it. I'm like, oh, what would you do to this to make it feel different? Yeah.
For me, it was just sagging it out, like lowering the rear end, 108 sag, dropping the forks, flushing the clamps. Then we did throw a 23.5 ride engineering triple clamps on that one. And that helped a lot. And then what else did I do? That was pretty much my setup. I raced it at Thunder Valley this year. So I did the Yamaha Paula, Gas at Hangtown, and Honda at Thunder Valley. And yeah, that was basically my setup. The ride engineering, put FMF on there. I don't remember if I put engine mounts from FCP on there or not, but the Honda is like amazing engine, amazing ergonomics. Like, it feels awesome.
Yeah.
And you feel like factory, and you feel like Jett Lawrence when you ride it for a little bit, and then all of a sudden you make a mistake and you're like, where did that even come from, right? So that's basically my experience with the Honda. Like, it's great until it's not. And like you said, you have to anticipate the twitch on the front end, the tucking in the front end in the corners. And I honestly feel for Chase Sexton, because like, I'm like, yeah, I know what he feels like. You feel amazing, and then you get spit off and you don't know how it happened. And it's totally different shock, different suspension, different everything on his bike and stuff. But it's, you have to ride it differently. And
Did you hear when Trey Kennard said that they run about 95 millisag?
I did. Yeah, that was wild.
Crazy.
Yeah.
But I've felt Jett and Hunter's like steering and stuff on their bike too. Like, it seems like even they do a lot to like compensate for that feeling.
Steering stabilizers too.
I think they would have. Yeah. I think they had the Showa one on there.
Yeah. And you got a little piece behind the number plate so you can't see it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Just a little, just for photos and stuff. But,
okay.
There's nothing really big to hide. It's just a stabilizer, but
yeah,
it definitely helps that bike a lot.
Yeah. It's pretty incredible that Jett, like, you're talking about that bike, you can't make a mistake. Dude won 22 races in a row. Yeah. Like, how do you go and be that perfect on that bike? Because when I looked at Chase's crashes, I spoke, Wygant was on the show before you.
Oh, cool.
And I was talking to him and saying, like, why did nobody blame the bike? In the commentary, in the booth, they were so hard on Chase. Chase. I'm like, bro, if you ride one of those bikes, the crashes he's having are the crashes that
everybody's
you feel like you're going to have on the bike. And it's just, it's like a characteristic.
Yeah. No, honestly, I think Jett rides it perfectly, obviously. And I did a video, like I told you, every week I have to do videos. So some weeks it's about us testing, some weeks it's about us building, some weeks we're traveling, racing, some weeks you're just talking about what happened at the race. And that's the fun part of my job too, is getting to break it down a little bit. And so I was talking about Jett, and on the podium at Redbud last year, he talked about, I'm not as strong as these guys, so I have to ride the bike a little smarter. I have to finesse it a little bit. The 450 is a big bike. It'll bite me really easily if I don't respect the power. So I have to be smart with how I handle it, right? And that was a rough quote of what he said in the press conference. And I talked about it in the video, and it was just like, he's doing everything you have to do to manage this bike
make
well.
That bike work.
He respects it. Yeah, he's not trying to make the bike work for him. He's trying to like work for the bike almost, you know. And then coming from the 250, having great technique, having insane fitness to be able to hold that technique, and like all those puzzle pieces come together to where he's respecting that bike, and then riding it exactly where it needs to be ridden. It's pretty impressive. And then because like he knows that he can't go charge hard on it, like he has to knock it down. Like I told you about the Yamaha. Remember when I just said like about the Yamaha, when I toned it down, I went faster. And I think Jett's feeling that same thing, like, hey dude, this thing is gnarly. Like I got to hold on to this for 30 minutes. Okay, I'm going to tone it down a little bit. And then it just keeps getting better and better, And Yeah, it looks like he's not trying, and he is trying. We know he is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that mindset of going slower to go faster and being mindful of like, I know I can push right here, so doing it, and then like, hey, I feel a little uncomfortable here. What do I do to change that? And his group and him are second to none, and like making those changes on the fly and being present enough to like, that didn't work that well. Let's try something else.
Yeah.
So it's pretty impressive and yeah, wild to see.
So does the 250 Honda have the same characteristics, or is it just in the 450?
The 250 Honda is a lot slower, a lot slower. So like the biggest thing I learned as a test rider, like the engine, like the 250 is maybe 10 pounds. It's 10 pounds lighter. I think it's actually 15 pounds lighter, but that's a huge difference. But it's still a 219 pound motorcycle, so it's still heavy. And so, but the 250 engine is a lot, the rotating mass inside the engine, the piston, everything inside the cylinder.
It makes the biggest difference.
It's a lot smaller.
Yeah.
So like, I like to picture a spinning top, like you're a little kid and you spin a top and it just keeps going. If you got a little one and you touch it with your finger, it falls over real like easily and then bounces back up, right?
Yeah.
Think about if you have like a 10 pound spinning top and you somehow were able to get it fast enough to spin and you touched it, your hand would be hurting. Like you wouldn't even budge, right? Yeah. Like that's the difference between a 450 and a 125. 125 is like a little tiddler, like little spinning top that you could just dink and knock over and whip it and lean it into corners and, rail some berms and just like, it's not going to upset the chassis because it's slow, but also because rotating mass will let you dive into corners like that. Same thing with the 250, same thing like with the 350. The 350 is only 1 or 2 pounds lighter than the 450 KTM, but it feels way lighter on the track because of the rotating mass inside of the engine. So it's like, learning to respect that makes a big difference. I don't even know what your question was.
Well, the 250 Honda 450.
Oh,
so
yeah.
The fact that just that rotating mass.
Yeah.
Because that's why I never liked 450s. And that's what I tell to people. It's like, I'm on the brakes, but the bike doesn't want to stop.
Yeah.
So, but all that is everything rotating
continuing to go.
Still so the motor's still revving and still moving forward. And what you might be at 12,000 RPM, and then when you're in your braking zone, you're in 5,000 RPM. But it's like still
forward.
Oh, that's still 5,000 revs per minute. That it's pushing you forward.
Yeah,
and that's the feeling I always didn't like on a 450, and especially like I feel like now I could go pick up a 450. I rode one a bunch in Dubai, but being fitter and riding a lot more this year, I'd just go get a 450 and I'd be sweet. I'd say I could. A lot of my complaints about 450s are gone purely based on being a better rider. Yeah. But that weight and that feeling and that push, and you got to think like every time you come into a turn, the motor's trying to stand up.
Exactly.
And push forward.
Like a spinning top.
Yeah. I'd always say like a hard drive. You know when you pick up a hard drive and it's spinning?
Yeah.
That's kind of the same thing. And you've got that gyroscopic effect and you kind of like get flown around.
Totally.
But that's basically what's happening inside a motorcycle.
100%. Yeah, it's interesting. So to answer your question, the 250 is a lot easier to handle because you don't have the speed, the power, the spinning top going inside the engine that's going to pull you out. So like there's not as many complaints with 250 Honda handling. The one funny story I have with 250 Hondas is thing is whips like no other, dude. Hondas in general whip like no other. Like you just think about whipping and it whips off the jump. And when I first started MXA, like 2018 Honda 250, I was riding KTMs before or Huskies when I raced. And I got on the Honda and we're at Comp Edge and they're like, yeah, throw a whip, hit this jump, get some pictures, And I'm like, completely upside down, and I'm like, whoa, that was crazy. Like I don't want to get hurt. Like there's only you guys. I have one photographer here. There's nobody else who cares. Like just don't whip it so big, just get a cool photo. Like you whipped it too big to where the photo doesn't even look good because you're only looking at the underside of the bike. Like for the magazine, we want to see the whole bike, so we don't need that big of a whip, Yeah. So like just chill out, and then like okay, less of a whip, even bigger, and it just got bigger and bigger, and it's like, dude, how does this thing because of, like I mentioned, that rotating mass, how Honda positions the weight inside of their chassis, it handles and moves quicker and turns sharper because of those things. So in turn, it whips bigger. But if you put me on a KTM, sometimes it's harder for me to whip. Sometimes it's not, just depending on the day. But But yeah, Honda 250 up insane for whips, Honda 450 the same thing, and it all ties together with, like you said, that rotating mass. So the Honda 250, not too bad for handling. Like it's good, but you're not going fast enough. Like you got to work a lot harder to make your Honda 250 engine as fast as a KTM or even Yamaha.
Yeah.
So,
and what was I gonna ask something else about? Oh, did you get the Honda to where you actually like it? Or you couldn't quite get it there even with all, because that's kind of what I left wondering. Like, I wonder if I could get this to work, because how good is a Honda 450?
It's good.
Like, you just want to love a Honda.
Dude, you
450.
feel amazing. Like I feel like Jett Lawrence when I ride it, or Chase Sexton, and like, or Ken Roxon, you know, whoever's on it at the time, you feel like them, you know, and the engine is amazing. And they, like, that's the other story about Honda, is like started out at 60 horsepower engines not too long ago. And then the last couple of years, they just keep toning it down. It's like the Honda's gotten slower and slower, but it's easier to ride because of that. So it's funny how that works. Now I think it's 56 horsepower, 57, but we don't want more horsepower on that bike. That's for sure. We want to make it easier to ride. So I did get it feeling pretty good with AHM before I raced it at Thunder Valley, but it was only a handful. Like, I didn't get enough time on it, and I definitely wouldn't say that I have that bike dialed. Like, it's even after many days of testing different things on that bike, like we figure out what helps it, what makes it better. But I haven't gotten to the point to where it's like, you know, I could feel great on it. And that, because of that, it's like we always say, like, it takes a full-time job to make a Honda 450 good. You know what I mean? You gotta be willing to test. Even guys who like Honda are like, no, you gotta be real particular about your torque settings. You gotta be very meticulous about this, and that. So it's not a set it and forget it type bike, at least not in my experience. But at the same time, it's still a Honda 450. It's still an amazing bike. I don't want to sound like a Honda hater, but it's a challenging bike to figure out.
Yeah, it's got its own. It's very peculiar.
For sure.
We're excited to announce the launch of our new membership site, gypsytales.com, packed with exclusive content and perks that you won't find anywhere else. This is your chance to become a part of the Gypsy Gang. And as a special bonus, if you sign up to an annual membership, you'll be entered into the draw to win our custom-built TC125. Gypsy Gang.